In this video, you'll learn how to locate places on Earth using longitude, latitude, hemispheres, and something new called coordinates. So as usual, if you need to pause the video, if you need to rewind to any points, please go ahead and do that. So here we have a basic map, and before we get into this new thing called coordinates, there are a few things that you need to know before we do that. One of the things that you're going to need to know is that this line is called the equator. Also, you're going to need to know that this line is called the prime meridian. Now, I know we've talked about this before, and this is just a review, but make sure you understand what each of these map elements is, because you're going to need to get to coordinates. You're also going to need to know about the compass rose, which is right up here in the corner. And you are going to need to be familiar with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, and where those are on a map. Now this is something new. If you look at the numbers on this map, you'll see they have a little circle next to them. And that is the degree symbol. Now these degrees aren't like temperature. They don't say anything about how warm it is outside or how cold or anything having to do with temperature. All you need to know is whenever you see this symbol next to a number, like this right here, you read it as 60 degrees. Okay? That little circle means that you should say degrees after the number. Going over here, you'd pronounce this 15 degrees. Over here, 0 degrees. So you need to know that. You also need to know about latitude and longitude. You need to know that latitude lines run from east to west and west to east, just like this. These are latitude lines. And you'll need to know that these are longitude lines. They're long. They run from north to south, north to south. You need to know these. You'll need to know where all 4 hemispheres are located. The northern hemisphere, western hemisphere, southern and eastern hemispheres. And you can always use the compass rose to tell that, but you're going to need to know where all 4 hemispheres are located. You're going to need to know all of these map elements in order to get to the next thing. So if you're not sure about any of these, you can review this video, or you can hit pause, go take a look at your notes, or review the earlier video so that you make sure you understand these things, because you're going to need to understand coordinates. So here's a basic map of the Earth, and I've taken the compass rose and I've kind of broken it into pieces. So you see north is up here, east, south, and west. I've never seen a compass rose that actually looks like this, but it's still basically okay because it shows you where the directions are on a map, and you're going to need to know those. Here we have the equator. Let's start by shading in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so now we're just looking at the northern hemisphere. If you look at this arrow, you'll see it's pointing to 15 degrees. And this is the entire latitude line. This whole entire latitude line is called 15 degrees. That's not its full name, but we're going to call it that for now. Now, if you can see, that line is north of the equator. It's in the northern hemisphere. So the actual name for this line is pronounced 15 degrees north. That's all you got to say. 15 degrees north. And when you say that, you're talking about this latitude line. It's in the northern hemisphere at 15 degrees. It's pronounced 15 degrees north. Here's another one. This entire line, the name of this latitude line is 60 degrees north. 60 degrees because of the number, and it's called north because it is in the northern hemisphere north of the equator. Here's another one. This latitude line is called 75 degrees north. Now let's take a look at the southern hemisphere. And if you look at this line here, it's 15 degrees south because it's south of the equator in the southern hemisphere. And the name of this entire line is 15 degrees south. This entire line on the map is called 45 degrees south. This line on the map, the name of this line is 75 degrees south. Now there are two other hemispheres. This is the prime meridian, right? Let's take a look at the western hemisphere. Everything on Earth in here is in the western hemisphere. So down here, this right here, I'm pointing to 30 degrees, and this entire longitude line from 30 degrees here all the way to 30 degrees here, it's called 30 degrees, but since it's in the western hemisphere, the name of this line is 30 degrees west. That's it. This entire longitude line is called 90 degrees west. This line, because you can see it's 150 degrees to 150 degrees, is called 150 degrees west. That's the name of that line. Now let's take a look at the eastern hemisphere. Same thing. Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. This entire longitude line is called 60 degrees east because it's in the eastern hemisphere and it's east of the prime meridian. This line here, you can see 120 degrees. That entire line is called 120 degrees east. 180 degrees east. That's the name of that line. Now, if you need to pause the video and review that, please do that now. It's very important that you understand the names of these longitude and latitude lines. If you need to pause, do that now. If not, you can go on. Now we get to the point where we're discussing coordinates. And it can be a little complicated, but if you understand the equator, the prime meridian, latitude lines, longitude lines, all four of the hemispheres, and the fact that this is pronounced 60 degrees, 180 degrees, if you understand all of those things, then this shouldn't be too tough. If you're still a little bit confused on those things I just named, then you want to review until you feel comfortable about using all of these terms. So if you take a look at this map, I'm going to identify some specific points on the surface of the Earth. And if you think about it, it's pretty important that we know where specific things are, where cities, or where maybe there's rivers, or lakes, or mountains. It's important that we know exactly where those are on the Earth. And before we had this advanced technology, we used maps. And the way that we identified specific points on the Earth is by using something called coordinates. This is a coordinate. This is a coordinate. This is a coordinate. And this is a coordinate. And you can see on this map, all of these coordinates are right at places where the latitude line and the longitude line intersect, or where they cross each other. You can see this point on the Earth. Here's latitude line, longitude line, right where they intersect, right where they cross is called a coordinate. Now, if you look a little bit closer at this map, maybe you'll notice that any point on the Earth is in two hemispheres at the same time. Either the northern or the southern hemispheres, and also in either the eastern or the western hemispheres. If we take a look at this coordinate, this point on the Earth, you'll see it's in the northern hemisphere because it's north of the equator, but it's also in the western hemisphere because it's west of the prime meridian. This point is in the northern hemisphere and in the eastern hemisphere. This point is in the southern hemisphere, but also in the eastern hemisphere. And this point is in the southern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So make sure you have a kind of a good understanding of that. I know it can be a little bit tricky, but if you do feel comfortable about this, then we'll go on to the next thing. So when we are naming coordinates, we always say the north or south degrees first, and then the east or west degrees. So you'll see I'm always naming the latitude line first and the longitude line second. So let's take a look at this point in the Earth right here. First, we're looking to see whether it's in the northern or southern hemisphere. We see it's in the northern hemisphere, and we see it's on this latitude line right here. And if you follow this line across, you will see that says 40 degrees. So we call this line 40 degrees north. That's the first coordinate. But we see that this point is also on this longitude line in the western hemisphere. So this longitude line is called 100 degrees west. And when we're looking for this specific point on the Earth, we name it 40 degrees north, 100 degrees west. That's the name of this point. You do the latitude line first, then the longitude line. Let's take a look at this one. Looking at the latitude line first, see it's in the northern hemisphere, and we can see that that point is on the line that's called 60 degrees north. And it's also on the longitude line named 60 degrees east because it's in the eastern hemisphere, east of the prime meridian. So the name of this point is 60 degrees north, 60 degrees east. This point, see if you can guess what that point is called. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. This point is called 20 degrees south, 120 degrees west. Did you get it right? Let's try one more. Way down here. Take a couple seconds, see if you can figure out what that coordinate is called. You were correct if you said 60 degrees south, 160 degrees east. So again, I know this is kind of tricky, and maybe some of you will get it quickly. Maybe it might take a little bit longer for some of you. Either way, it's completely okay. If you need to review any of the videos, please do that. You'll have plenty of time to do that. When you're ready,